Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Matt returned to his grandfather's remote mountain cabin, he expected silence and serenity. Instead, he found a stranger in a bathrobe claiming it was her home. What began as confusion unraveled into a twisted real-life scam, one that would go viral and end in court. I hadn't been up to the cabin in over 7 months, and every time I turned that last bend in the gravel road, a familiar feeling would hit me. A weird mix of peace and pride. This wasn't just a vacation spot. This was my grandfather's legacy. He built that cabin board by board back in the 1960s, deep in the Colorado mountains at nearly 8,000 feet elevation with no neighbors in sight, just pine, sky, and the sound of a stream that never stopped running. I was finally bringing someone with me this time, Sarah. We'd been dating for about 5 months, and I figured it was time to show her the side of me that didn't involve blueprints, Austin traffic, or overpriced lattes. As we crested the final hill and the roof of the cabin came into view, I smiled. Everything looked just like I left it. Same timber silhouette against the backdrop of Gunnison's Hills. That is, until we got closer. There was a car. A dusty silver Subaru parked at an angle next to the porch like it had been there a while. The kind of car that belongs to someone who thinks national parks are theirs by birthright. I slowed to a crawl. Sarah leaned forward. "Is someone here?" I didn't answer. Something felt off. I'd winterized the place back in October. Power and water off. Alarm set. Windows locked. I hadn't given a soul access. Not even my brother. But now one of the shutters hung crooked, and the front window was cracked open an inch. Smoke. No. Steam. Curled up from a chipped metal kettle on the deck rail. I parked, got out, and stepped softly onto the gravel, heart knocking harder with each step. I reached the porch and froze. There she was. A woman in her 50s, blonde gray curls messily tied up, draped in a floral bathrobe and fuzzy slippers, calmly sipping coffee from my chipped enamel mug. Her legs were propped up on the porch rail like this was a scene from a retirement commercial. She blinked at me once, then tilted her head, like I was the problem here. Excuse me," I managed. She squinted. "You must be the maintenance guy Danny sent. You're late." "Danny? Lady, I own this cabin." She let out a small, disdainful laugh and stood up slowly, like a queen rising from a throne she hadn't earned. "You're funny. And rude. Who just walks into someone's rental like that?" I looked over at Sarah, who was standing behind me now, wide-eyed and gripping her bag like it might protect her. I pulled the keys from my pocket and held them up. I inherited this place from my grandfather. I have title deeds, blueprints with my company's stamp, utility accounts. This isn't a rental. Her eyes narrowed like that was an insult. Then her tone changed, cold, confident. "I have a signed rental agreement, $2,000 a month, paid in advance, through January. This is my home until the end of my lease." "Lease with who?" She stepped back into the doorway, picked up her phone from a side table, my table, and pulled up an email thread. "Danny Howell, Desert Stay Rentals. I've got emails, proof of payment, everything. So I suggest you leave before I call the cops." Now my blood turned to ice. Danny, the bastard in the trailer half a mile up the ridge. We'd shared beers once or twice. I'd even let him help patch a leaky pipe 2 summers ago. But this? I never gave Danny, or anyone, permission to rent out this cabin. "Well, maybe you should take that up with him." She snapped. "Because I'm not going anywhere." I stepped forward, still holding the keys in my palm like they were going to make this real for her. "Ma'am, this is my property. I have documents. I'm not trying to start anything, but you need to leave." That's when she pulled the stun gun from her tote bag. It wasn't huge, sleek, black, one of those models that's more intimidation than function, but she pointed it at me like she knew how to use it. I didn't move. She didn't blink. "You're not the owner. You're trying to scam me. One more step and I'm calling the sheriff for attempted assault." I raised my hands slowly and backed off. Sarah pulled on my arm and whispered, "Matt, come on, we should go." And we did. Drove back down the mountain road in silence, my mind spinning with disbelief. When we reached the nearest town, I went straight to the sheriff's office, armed with my papers, ready to file trespassing charges. The deputy took one look at the documents, nodded sympathetically, then told me there was nothing they could do. The woman, Karen, her name turned out to be, of course, had shown them her paperwork, a digital lease, proof of payments, driver's license with my address listed as her temporary residence. The utilities were active, Everything checked out from their perspective. She's a good faith tenant until a judge says otherwise, the deputy said. We can't forcibly remove her without a court order. I sat there for a second, feeling the room tilt slightly. My own cabin. My family's cabin. And I'd been legally locked out of it. Sarah reached for my hand. What now? What now, indeed? I woke up the next morning in a cramped motel room with the kind of polyester sheets that trap your dreams and suffocate your spine. Sarah had already packed her things, politely. She wasn't mad, just disturbed. I couldn't blame her. You drive 10 hours into the Rockies expecting serenity and end up being threatened by a bathrobed woman with a stun gun. She kissed my cheek, said, "Let me know when it's all sorted," and flew back to Austin that afternoon. I stayed. I drove straight to the sheriff's office again, thinking maybe if I explained everything slowly, like to a confused uncle, they'd realize how absurd this was. But Deputy Larson was clear, almost apologetic. She's got a valid lease, Matt. Her bank statements show 3 months' rent paid up front. The utilities are on. Her driver's license has your cabin's address listed as a temporary residence. She forged that license, or bribed someone. This is my damn house. I could take you up there right now and show you the master bedroom closet. There's a carved panel behind the coats with my grandfather's initials. I don't doubt that, but I can't just roll up there and toss her out without a judge's say-so. Colorado protects tenants, even fraudulent ones, if they appear to be acting in good faith. That's not up to me. That's court. I stared at him. She pulled a stun gun on me. Larson rubbed the back of his neck. And you stepped off the property, didn't press charges, didn't capture it on camera. Your word against hers. Honestly, Matt, you need a lawyer. I left with my folder of deeds, blueprints, and a migraine. I drove back up the mountain out of sheer rage. Not to confront her. I wasn't that stupid. I stayed in my truck at the bottom of the trail and just stared at the house through the binoculars, like some bitter ex-husband watching his ex-wife throw a barbecue on the deck he built. The front porch now had potted plants. The kind of fake plastic succulents that belong in model homes and cheap staging setups. There were wind chimes, hanging from the porch beam. It felt like someone had put lipstick on my grandfather's legacy and made it dance for strangers. That night, I checked the utility registry online. Water and electricity had been reactivated 6 weeks ago under the name Desert Stay Rentals, LLC. The same name Karen had mentioned. I cross-referenced business filings for Gunnison County. Bingo. The LLC was registered to Daniel Howell, Danny, my beer-drinking, pickup-driving neighbor, the guy I once gave my spare wrench set to when his broke. I remembered last year, half drunk by the fire pit. I told him how the alarm panel was hidden behind the pantry shelf in case the code ever glitched. Thought I was just bragging. Now I realized I'd handed the fox the blueprints to the hen house. I drove past his trailer that night. No lights on, the truck was gone, figures. I spent the next 2 days driving between Gunnison County's records office, the utility companies, and an underpaid lawyer named Holly Rivera I found through a friend in Denver. She specialized in property disputes, the kind most folks assume only happen in dystopian novels or HOA horror stories. Holly was blunt. You've got the deed, the inheritance chain, and historic occupancy. That's good. But what you don't have is legal possession right now. She's squatting with paperwork that gives her just enough coverage to be labeled a tenant. I stared at her. But she's not. Doesn't matter what she is, Matt. Matters what she looks like to the court. She explained that the alarm had been manually deactivated through the internal panel. The last entry code used? A master override. Someone who knew the internal wiring, or had been shown. She leaned in, narrowing her eyes. This wasn't random. She wasn't conned by this Danny guy. She was part of it. That thought sat in my stomach like spoiled meat. I thought about how confidently she waved that contract in my face. How fast she flipped from surprised tenant to aggressive homeowner. She hadn't been confused. She'd been ready. I wanted to storm the place. Rip the chimes down. Rip her down. But instead, I sat in my truck that night. Hands on the steering wheel, watching my porch lights flicker on from a motion sensor I didn't install. Then I did something petty and possibly illegal. I cut the Wi-Fi, crawled through the ravine, unplugged the satellite modem I'd installed last summer, and walked away. Small victories. The moment Holly said, "This wasn't random," something inside me clicked. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was clarity. I'd been played, not by accident, not by a scam that got lucky. No. This was personal. Someone who knew that I wouldn't be up here in winter. Someone who'd been inside the cabin before. Someone who knew exactly where the alarm panel was, what utilities were disconnected, and how to keep things quiet just long enough. Danny Howell. He was the only person who made sense. I'd let him into the cabin 2 years ago when a pipe froze. I trusted him. Stupid. I trusted a man who lived in a rusting trailer and bartered favors for six-packs and leftover firewood. I sat in Holly's office the next morning, staring at the Desert Stay Rentals registration she'd printed. Owner Daniel L. Howell, registered address. The same trailer at the end of my road. You think I can get him on fraud? She shrugged. We can't accuse until we have something recorded or written. But if you want to provoke something stupid out of him, I might know a way. We set the bait. I created a burner email under a fake name and messaged the contact listed for Desert Stay Rentals. Interested in secluded winter cabin. Heard you had one in Gunnison County. No neighbors, no cameras. Cash okay? The reply came within hours. We do. Off-grid. Quiet. No service, so nobody can bother you. $2,000 a month. Minimum 2-month stay. No background checks. Danny's grammar hadn't improved, but I had him. I set up a meeting for Friday night in town at the only bar that served beer cold enough to numb what was about to happen. I wore a hoodie ball cap and mirrored sunglasses. I looked like a paranoid Twitch streamer, but I didn't care. I had a small recorder in my pocket. Holly's idea. He showed up looking exactly like himself. Worn Carhartt jacket, grease under his fingernails, confidence of a man who thought mountain air made him untouchable. Name's Rick, I said, offering my hand. Danny, you looking to disappear for a while? Something like that. We talked for 15 minutes while he sipped his Coors like it was communion wine. He bragged about the spot, said the owner was some city guy, barely ever showed up, and that he was cool with me watching the place. Hell, I've taken better care of it than he ever did. I nodded like I was impressed. He leaned in conspiratorially. That place was empty for 5 winters straight. This year, I figured, why not make some use of it? Rent it to someone chill. I vet them. Quiet types. Pay up front. You'll love it. Does the owner know? He laughed. Nah, but who cares? He's rich. He's got a firm in Austin, probably forgot this place even exists. I held that smile on my face long enough to walk to the truck. As soon as the door shut, I laughed out loud. I had it. Full confession. Admittance of unauthorized rental, false claims of ownership, and maybe even trespassing on tape. But that wasn't the best part. Because when I got back to the motel and ran his name through social media archives, I found something that made my skin crawl. An old Facebook post from 5 years ago. Danny smiling in front of a Colorado real estate weekend conference. Arm in arm with none other than Karen. Same Karen. She looked slightly younger, fewer crow's feet. Same smug chin tilt. Caption, power duo, closing deals and climbing mountains. I dug deeper. Old posts, some half deleted, showed their real estate license numbers. Both expired. A dissolved LLC from 4 years ago. Aspen Alpine Properties, LLC. Both names on the paperwork. Karen wasn't some poor victim who got scammed by a mountain lowlife. She was in on it. They had a history, a business, and probably a plan. She knew exactly whose home she walked into that winter. Suddenly, her calmness made sense. Her attitude, her posture. She wasn't trying to defend a fake lease. She was playing a part in a long con they'd run before. I printed everything, made copies, uploaded it all to a cloud drive, backed it up to 3 USB sticks, and sent one to Holly with a single line. They're partners, or were. We're not just dealing with fraud. This is conspiracy. That night, I parked my truck again by the trail. The lights in the cabin were on. She was cooking something. I could see the flicker of the stove through the kitchen window. My stove. She stepped onto the porch with a glass of wine, looked out over the mountains like she owned them, then turned back inside without a care in the world. I smiled. The mountains always bury the truth eventually, but not this time. 2 days after Holly filed our preliminary complaint, I got served. Right there at the motel front desk. A local process server, flannel shirt, clipboard, the usual small-town smile that barely masked the discomfort of handing someone legal poison. Karen was suing me, not just a casual cease and desist, not even a weak demand letter, a full-blown civil suit, trespassing, attempted unlawful eviction, emotional distress, and harassment. $25,000 in damages. According to her declaration, I had burst into her rented home unannounced, brandishing aggression, threatening her safety, and leaving her emotionally devastated and fearful for her life. Fearful for her life. From me. I sat on the motel bed reading it twice, then once more just to confirm I wasn't hallucinating. The pages actually used the words trauma, panic attacks, and male intimidation. My favorite line: the plaintiff, a vulnerable single woman, has suffered ongoing psychological harm from being targeted and stalked by the alleged owner, whose identity she could not independently verify. I wanted to laugh and throw something at the same time. It got worse. By sunset, my name and face were on the Gunnison Weekly's website under the headline, "Woman Claims Threats from Property Owner, Leaseholder, or Victim." Karen had given a statement to the press, a very public statement. She painted herself as a peace-loving, nature-seeking woman from Arizona who came up to the mountains to recover from burnout and divorce, only to be terrorized by an unhinged man claiming ownership without evidence. I guess my grandfather's blueprints didn't qualify as evidence to her, nor the deed, nor the title history. Then came the interviews. 2 local news crews showed up at the bottom of the trailhead the next morning. They weren't looking for me. They were there to interview her. Karen stood on my porch, wearing a Patagonia fleece like she'd earned the right to be sponsored by nature itself, and gave a heartfelt monologue. I was just looking for peace and quiet, she told the camera, voice shaking slightly. Instead, I was threatened. I had to fear for my life. I paid rent. I signed a lease. And now I'm being villainized for trusting someone. One of the camera guys panned the lens toward the view behind her, my grandfather's view. It made me physically nauseous. And wouldn't you know it, the vultures came next. A handful of well-meaning but completely uninformed locals formed a small support group on Facebook. Justice for Karen. They wanted accountability, transparency. Proof that I wasn't just some rich developer trying to bully a sweet, older woman out of her safe space. Some anonymous genius even posted my LinkedIn profile, accusing me of weaponizing legal systems to abuse tenancy laws. That one stung. I lost 2 architecture clients in 24 hours. But Holly, thank God for her, didn't flinch. She's overplayed her hand, she said, flipping through the printouts like she was reviewing a grocery list. You don't sue a landowner while standing in his house and then go give press interviews unless you're arrogant or stupid, or both. She had already filed a counterclaim, damages for trespass, unlawful occupation, fraud, and conspiracy. But the real dagger was the evidence we were assembling. We now had Danny's recorded confession, screenshots of the rental correspondence, utility account changes tied to Desert Stay Rentals, LLC, ownership documents with notarized inheritance trail, alarm logs showing manual disarming, photos of Danny and Karen in Vegas, records of their dissolved real estate business. And then Sarah, of all people, delivered the cherry on top. She texted me a link one night with no context, just, "You're gonna love this." It was a cached version of Karen's deleted Facebook post from December, 2 months before I showed up. A photo of a snowy cabin, clearly my cabin, with a caption, "Paradise doesn't have to be expensive. If you know who to trust. Off-grid living, Mountain Queen." Tagged Danny Howell. Karen had deleted it weeks ago, probably when she realized we were coming for her legally. But the internet never forgets, especially not when Google caches your smug crimes for public consumption. Holly printed it immediately and added it to our binder, now thicker than a church Bible. This is the smoking gun. She knew. She planned it. She wasn't scammed. She was in business with him. Even better, Sarah had found a second post, a private comment thread where Karen joked with a friend about how she was finally living like the rich do, but without the paperwork. The comment was dated 10 days before she ever signed the fake lease. I'd been furious before, but now I was focused. Karen thought she'd take this to the public, but soon we'd take it to court and bury her in paper. By the time the county clerk stamped our motion for a court-ordered eviction, I was operating on coffee, fury, and pure spite. Holly said we had enough to get a judge's attention, and possibly law enforcement's, but that didn't mean we were getting the cabin back anytime soon. It meant only one thing: escalation. And escalate it did. The first domino fell when Danny got sloppy. Apparently, the pressure of pending litigation didn't sit well with him. While Karen was out there soaking up pity on porch interviews, Danny tried to scrub his tracks, shut down the Desert Stay Rentals website, deleted burner emails, even tried to close the LLC. But he forgot one thing. Holly had already subpoenaed everything: utility records, payment trails, email headers, IP logs, even the PayPal account used for the lease, which was tied directly to Danny's personal bank account. Genius. Then came the warrant. The sheriff's department, no longer friendly or sympathetic now that we had a judge's interest and a full conspiracy file in hand, executed a search warrant on Danny's trailer. I got the call from Holly while I was in line at the gas station refueling and restocking cheap motel ramen. They raided his place, she said. Matt, they found things. The list read like a DIY fraud starter kit, fake lease templates, copies of IDs from at least 4 other alleged tenants, a burner phone with texts between him and Karen using code names K and D, messages like "Winter Queen moved in yet?" and "Tell her to keep it quiet if anyone asks." No cameras, best of all. A password-protected folder labeled Cabin Deals. Holly got access after law enforcement cracked the drive. Inside were photos of my cabin taken at multiple points during the winter, showing Karen lounging on the deck in different outfits. She wasn't hiding, she was posing. There was also a PDF labeled Split Sheet, line items with numbers, including rent $2,000, utilities minus $120, payout to K $940, payout to D $940. Cleaning supply budget $20. They even shorted themselves $10. The folder had a spreadsheet with dates going back 2 winters, 2 previous tenants. Same scam, different victims. Only this time they picked the wrong mark, someone who came back. Karen was summoned to the sheriff's office that week for questioning. From what Holly told me, she walked in like a woman going to a parent-teacher conference. Confident, hair blown out, sunglasses on indoors. She denied everything. Said she was tricked, that she'd never met Danny before renting the cabin, that she didn't know what was happening. Then they showed her the photos, the old Vegas pic, the Facebook posts, the email trail, the spreadsheet. She shut up after that. But she still refused to leave the cabin, even with law enforcement pressure, even after being presented with a formal cease and desist from the county. Until a judge evicts me, she said, this is my legal residence. You can't scare me with your little papers. So they escalated again. Code enforcement came next. Turns out the temporary power line running into the cabin, which Danny installed without permits, violated 3 state utility codes. The deck furniture she moved in, technically an unapproved structure. The portable heater inside, fire code violation. Karen had made herself not just a trespasser, but a walking fire hazard. They fined her nearly $5,000. Still, she didn't move. I stood across the valley one evening with binoculars and watched as she lit candles in the living room, likely because power had finally been cut after the unauthorized account was shut down. She was still there, still holding the line, like she thought she could bluff the mountain itself. But now, the tide was turning. Local news started to shift the narrative. Reporters caught wind of the Desert Stay rental scam. A second victim came forward, a retired couple from New Mexico who'd paid Danny a deposit the previous year and never got a key. Another woman from Idaho said she'd been promised a ski cabin and got ghosted. Suddenly, justice for Karen didn't trend quite the same way. Then Holly got a call. Her lawyer wants to talk, she said. They know the ship's sinking, but she's still playing innocent. They're claiming she was manipulated. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the wall of the motel, then muttered, "What do we do next?" Holly's voice was steel. "We push. Hard." And so we did. I sat outside the courthouse, in the same flannel I'd been wearing for 3 days, sipping coffee that tasted like cardboard, watching Karen climb out of a black SUV like she was walking into a press conference. She wore a cream pantsuit, oversized sunglasses, and the smug aura of someone who'd convinced herself the mountain had bent to her will. Inside, the courtroom was half full. Locals, reporters, a couple of HOA fanatics, probably hoping to see a real estate execution. Danny wasn't there. His attorney had advised against public appearances, but his testimony would come soon enough. For now, it was Karen's turn in the spotlight. She pled not guilty to all charges: trespassing, conspiracy to defraud, giving false statements, obstruction, claimed she had no prior relationship with Danny. she was merely a trusting woman misled by a man she thought was running a legitimate business. Her lawyer, some LA transplant with a $500 haircut and a $10 soul, leaned hard into the victim narrative. Ms. Sheffield is a woman of dignity, he told the judge. She signed what she believed was a valid lease. She paid rent. She settled into what she thought was a legal agreement. She never intended to deceive anyone. That line hung in the air like a fart in a church. Holly stood, cleared her throat, and calmly laid out the facts. She had everything organized, color-coded, and bound in neat little booklets labeled fraud, financials, and communications. She might as well have labeled them The Death of Karen Sheffield. We played the audio of Danny bragging about watching the place, calling it an easy winter gig. Then came the spreadsheets from his laptop. The payout records, the emails, the messages between them under initials K and D. The wire transfers. Karen didn't flinch. Yet. Then came the Facebook post. The one she deleted. The one where she joked about living in paradise, if you know who to trust. The one with the wink emoji. The courtroom didn't laugh. They leaned forward. And then we dropped the final nail. The video. Back in April, Sarah had been filming casually with her phone during that first day when we walked up to the cabin, mostly for memories. She'd forgotten she even had the footage until I asked her to double-check. And there it was. A grainy but unmistakable clip of Karen standing on my porch in a bathrobe, holding a stun gun at hip level, shouting, "Get off my property or I'll light you up." The clip had already gone viral by then. Someone on TikTok had posted it anonymously under the title, "Karen Claims Random Cabin, Threatens Owner with Stun Gun," and it took off like wildfire. By the time the court session started, the video had over 4 million views, 2 million likes, and hundreds of duets mocking her delivery with captions like, Electric Karen, and "Yevor Sach Cabin Coup." The judge paused the session to address it. "I'm aware of the media attention," she said, "but let's not mistake viral fame for admissible evidence." Holly smiled and handed her a certified copy from Sarah's original file, time-stamped, location verified, authentic. Not just viral, now officially part of the case record. Karen's face twitched, just once, just enough. But the dam didn't break until Danny's deposition. He appeared via Zoom, under fluorescent lighting, looking like a man who hadn't slept in a week. Because he hadn't. His plea deal depended on full cooperation, and boy, did he cooperate. "She came to me with the idea," he said flatly. Said the guy never came up in winter. Thought we could do a couple short-term leases, pocket the money. She'd do the tenant stuff. I'd set up utilities. Split it 50-50. He paused, then added, "Honestly, she planned most of it. She used to be in real estate. She said we'd done it before." Karen's lawyer objected, but the judge waved him down. That was the moment. You could feel it in the room. The collective shift. The crowd stopped seeing her as a poor, middle-aged victim of fraud. Now she was a plotter, a scammer, a woman who wore fleece and drank stolen wine on stolen porches. When it was her turn to testify, she cracked. Not with a confession, not yet, but with fury. She snapped at the prosecutor. She blamed Danny, then blamed me, then snapped at the judge when asked to clarify a date. "I'm the one who's being harassed," she barked. "You're all letting this man pretend like he owns the mountain." "You're under oath," the judge reminded her gently. "Stick to facts." She couldn't. The judge called a recess. Holly turned to me and whispered, "She's cooked." As we stepped out into the hallway, someone from a local college newspaper rushed over with a phone out. "Mr. Langston, any comment on the video going viral?" I paused, looked at the phone, and said, "That wasn't even her best performance. Wait until you see part 2. It took the jury less than 3 hours. They came back stone-faced, verdict in hand, and the judge didn't waste time reading through it. Guilty on multiple counts for both defendants. For Danny, conspiracy to commit fraud, unlawful subletting, wire fraud, and falsifying tenancy documents. For Karen, unlawful occupation, obstruction of justice, filing a false police report, and, my personal favorite, menacing with a weapon. 11 years. That's what Danny got. 11 years in a federal facility, plus restitution, plus a lifetime ban from operating any business involving property or rentals. He looked resigned, not shocked. Like he'd been expecting this moment since he started forging lease agreements in his moldy trailer. Karen's sentence was lighter, but not soft. She got 3 years probation, a suspended 6-month jail term, 200 hours of community service, and was ordered to pay me $38,000 in damages. That included destruction of property, unauthorized use of utilities, legal fees, and, hilariously, the cost of replacing the porch furniture she threw off the deck after the verdict. She tried to appeal, filed a last-ditch motion claiming she'd been coerced into the scheme. The judge denied it within 48 hours, citing her emails, her deleted social media posts, and the fact that she'd never once during her months of occupation tried to contact any local authority to verify who owned the damn cabin. After the sentencing, I finally returned to the property with an actual escort from the sheriff's office this time. Karen had been forcibly removed 3 days earlier after ignoring the official court order to vacate. They'd found her sitting in the living room surrounded by boxes she never packed, wine-stained carpet, and empty mason jars labeled Mountain Air. She didn't go quietly. Apparently tried to chain herself to the fireplace mantel. Took them 4 hours and 1 bolt cutter to remove her. The place was a mess. The porch had burn marks from her makeshift fire pit. The couch was missing. The pantry smelled like expired kombucha. There were dream catchers hanging from every beam and a half-finished Live Laugh Love mural on the back of my grandfather's closet door. But it was mine again. I hired a crew to deep clean the place, restore the original fixtures, replace the bedding, and haul out Karen's taste in decor with industrial gloves. I had the locks changed, installed a biometric keypad, added motion sensors, and connected the entire system to my phone. And then I registered the property with the National Title Database. Holly's suggestion: if anyone ever tries to fake ownership again, this way you've got one more layer of public confirmation. It was official, national, and locked down tighter than Fort Knox. The funniest part: when Karen's TikTok video, the one where she threatened me with the stun gun, resurfaced again, now with updates like, here's what happened after Search or Karen tried to steal a mountain cabin, it became a full-blown saga. A creator made a 5-part breakdown. Another wrote a folk song about it. People started tagging me in memes with captions like, plot twist, the mountain belonged to Matt all along. Even local news did a follow-up segment titled Justice in the Rockies, when Karen met her match. They interviewed Holly. They asked if I'd consider writing a book. I said no, but I did write something. A public blog post titled How to Protect Your Mountain Property from Frauds, Squatters, and Entitled Freeloaders. It wasn't viral, but it was useful, especially for other seasonal owners who might think their cabin is safe just because the locks work. Within a month, I started getting emails from people across Colorado, Wyoming, and even Montana thanking me, sharing their own horror stories. Turns out I wasn't the only one. I was just one of the few who fought back and won. As for Karen, she tried to rebrand online, changed her name, opened a wellness coaching account, started posting selfies with hashtags like Art Rising from the Ashes and Nals Art Healing Through Injustice. But the internet never forgets. Every time she posted, someone would comment, "Did you get permission before entering that space too?" Eventually, she disappeared from social media. Some say she moved to Florida. Others say she tried squatting in a lake house and got chased off by raccoons. Danny? No one hears from him anymore. He's inmate number something in a federal facility where he won't be scamming anyone but maybe the vending machine. And me? I spent the next few weekends restoring the cabin one piece at a time, rebuilt the deck railing, refinished the floors, hung up my grandfather's old map of the Rockies again, right where it belonged. This time, I added a sign outside the front gate. A custom carving. Late October brought the first frost to the valley, the kind of quiet that wraps around the trees and smothers every noise, even the birds. I stood on the porch of the cabin, my porch, holding a mug of coffee and watching the steam rise, same way it did that first day. Only now, no intruders in robes, no stun guns, no stolen mugs, just me. And silence. It had been 6 months since the verdict, and almost a year since I first drove up that dirt road expecting peace, and got a psychodrama instead. The court case was over. The TikTok storm had passed. The mountain cabin Karen memes had finally faded, buried under whatever viral chaos came next. But the cabin, the land, the air, the creek down the ridge, it all remained. Still unmoved, like it had just waited for me to come back. I'd spent the summer restoring more than just the structure. The damage Karen left behind wasn't just physical. There was something corrosive in the feeling of being violated. Someone living in your memories, sleeping in your bed, laughing on your porch while trying to sue you into silence. I hadn't just reclaimed a property. I'd reclaimed space in my mind. I added things to the cabin. A better security system, sure, but also small rituals. Journaling every morning before the sun hit the ridge. A camera trap on the trail, not for safety anymore, just to track the deer. I didn't avoid the porch where she once stood with that stun gun. I repainted it, sanded the boards until the grain came back to life, reclaimed it one layer at a time. Locals still recognized me sometimes, at the gas station, at the feed store. "You're the guy with the cabin," they'd say, usually with a grin. Glad it all worked out. They meant well, but it was always a reminder. Once you go viral, even justice comes with a shadow. I ran into Deputy Larson one morning in town. He bought me a coffee, said he'd been wrong not to believe me sooner. "We see a lot of disputes up here," he muttered, stirring sugar into his cup. But this one was different. He wasn't wrong. A few weeks later, I got a letter from a couple in Idaho, total strangers. They'd seen my blog post about cabin fraud, and it saved them from wiring money to a Craigslist agent for a similar scam in Montana. The man wrote, "Because of your story, we looked deeper. We dodged a bullet. Thank you for speaking up." That letter meant more than any victory in court, but there was one last loose end. While cleaning out a storage bin Karen had left behind in the shed, locked, of course, I found a small notebook, half filled. Real estate leads, doodles, affirmations. On one page, in a looping, confident cursive, she'd written, "Vision, my own mountain space. No rules, no rent. Just mine." Underneath, "Manifest until it's yours." I stared at the words for a long time, folded the page, burned it in the fire pit. Sometimes delusion is louder than truth, but the mountain doesn't care about vision boards. The mountain cares about weather, patience, and the strength of the foundation beneath your feet. Now, when guests come, the rare few I let, they always stop at the new sign on the trail, same one I had carved back in June. People usually laugh, snap a photo, and ask if the story behind it is real. I just smile. Private property not for rent, not for sale, not for Karens and beyond it. The cabin, the stream, the forest, still mine, always mine.